Konnichiwa. Today we're going to talk about the most powerful hack I know for dealing with Japanese kanji and their pronunciation. Learning kanji is always going to be a big job, but there's one trick that can make handling kanji a great deal easier. I call it a trick or a hack because I believe in organic Japanese, as you probably know. I don't think we should be learning chopped off bits and pieces, whether they be kanji or vocabulary or bits of grammar. I think we should learn everything as an organic whole. But for this particular hack, I break my own rule, because it is a massive force multiplier. For a very small amount of effort, you can shortcut a huge amount of the problems involved in kanji and vocabulary. Now, this isn't something I invented. This is based in the very nature of kanji themselves, the way they are designed, right back from ancient times. And the basis of it is this. As you know, if you know anything about kanji at all, most kanji, most even slightly complex kanji, are made up of separate elements. Long before you get to the stage where you don't often see a kanji you don't know, long before that, you get to the stage where you don't often see a kanji that while you may not know it, you know all the elements it's made up of. And understanding these elements is fundamental to understanding kanji. If you don't know anything about this, I recommend my book Alice in Kanjiland, where I give you a grounding in basic kanji in an organic manner. Now for this lesson, I'm assuming you do have this basic knowledge. So, the fundamental piece of information here is that many complex kanji, not all of them, but a very considerable proportion, contain one element that is there to tell us how it's pronounced. What this tells us is the main on reading of the kanji. Obviously, it's the on reading because on readings are the Chinese readings of kanji, or at least they're based in what used to be the Chinese readings of the kanji. And since this phenomenon goes right back to the initial design of kanji, and since the kanji came from China, it's going to relate to the on readings, not the native Japanese kun readings of the kanji. But that's good, because that means that most of the time when we see these kanji in combinations, we know how they're pronounced. Now, it doesn't work 100% of the time, but it works enough of the time to be immensely powerful. It means that if we know the pronunciation of a word and we see the kanji, even if we didn't know those kanji, in many cases, using what I call the sound sisters, the sound elements in kanji, we can give a very good guess as to how it's pronounced. Conversely, if we know the kanji of a word but we can't remember how it's pronounced, using the sound sisters, we can give a very good guess as to how it's pronounced and be right most of the time. And if the knowledge of the pronunciation was in the back of our mind somewhere, which it very often was, we'll know whether it's right or not. This helps us with learning kanji. It helps us with remembering kanji after we've learned them. And there are about 100 of these elements, and I'm going to show you how they work, and then I'm going to introduce a technique I've built for learning them. And as I say, while I don't believe in learning things out of context, learning these 100 elements with the deck I've built, it's free, is such a massive force multiplier that for the small amount of effort that you put into this learning job, you reap huge benefits for the rest of your Japanese learning career. So we're going to start by looking at just one of the sound sisters, and this is ko. Now, you probably know this as the kanji in furui, old, and its on reading is ko. If you need a mnemonic for that, just remember how curious it is that the on reading of old is the same as the word for child, ko. This is one of the sound sisters whose own on-reading is the same as the on-reading in the kanji she governs. And she governs a lot of kanji. Look, here they are. And all of these kanji are going to have the on-reading ko most of the time. So this governs quite a lot of kanji, but more importantly, because these are the on-readings that you'll find in combined kanji words, this governs dozens and dozens of words. So you can see that by learning this one sound sister, you've got a huge force multiplier. You have a key to the pronunciation of a whole range of words. And each of the sound sisters does this. Some of them govern more kanji, some of them govern less. All of them govern a lot of words. Now, in my original article on this subject, I grouped the sound sisters into groups, sound sisterhoods, as I called them, of elements that govern the same sound, because I thought this was the best way of grouping them and remembering them. Since then, of course, I've made the deck, but I still think the sisterhoods are a useful way to get started. And whenever I come to a card in the deck that is covered in the article, I refer to the article. Now, you don't need to try to learn all the details of what I'm saying here. All I'm doing is giving you the fundamental idea. Then you can pick up the article, pick up the deck, and take it from there. Once you've learned all 100 sisters, you open the door to the pronunciation of literally thousands of words. So, just to show you how it works, we're going to look at the sisterhood called the Sei sisters, and I call them the saints and sages, and they all have the pronunciation Sei, and they all seem to have a theme of life, righteousness, and purity, and this could be a coincidence. I think it's a little more than a coincidence. I think sounds tend to be bound to meaning to a certain extent in Japanese. But that's really neither here nor there. Most of what I say about the sound sisters is really just there for mnemonic purposes, so you can attach those elements to the sounds they govern. So, the Sei sisters, there are 4 of them. The first one is the one that we first meet, usually I think in the word tadashi, correct or righteous. The second one means life or birth or directness or rawness. The third one, of course, means blue. It's the kanji of aoi. And the fourth one is actually the kanji for naru, become, but we don't usually use the kanji for that word. I see it as a knightly sister with a helmet and a ceremonial spear. The point about these is that they all have the pronunciation sei. They're a little more complex than most of the sisters in that they have a secondary pronunciation. All of them have a tendency sometimes to be pronounced sei and sometimes to be pronounced jo. Sei is their dominant reading, but they can also be jo. And that's relatively unusual. Most of the sound sisters, although they don't work 100% of the time, they work most of the time, and most of them only have one dominant pronunciation. This particular group has 2. And you'll quickly learn to associate sei and jo in your mind. But as you see between them, they govern 27 kanji and hundreds of words. The sound sister principle actually governs quite a lot more than the 100 I put into the deck. But the ones I put into the deck are the main ones, the dominant ones. Each one of them either covers quite a few kanji or appears very frequently in words. So this 100 is the core you need to give you the maximum leverage over words, but also in grasping the sound sister principle, which you will do by the time you've got to grips with this 100, you will apply it automatically in the other more sporadic cases that you find throughout Japanese kanji. Now you'll find the article in the link below, and from there you can find the deck. It's completely free, but you need to sign up to my newsletter, the Dollygram, in order to get it. It's actually just a rather convenient way of distributing it, and if you don't want to receive the Dollygram, I won't be offended if you cancel your subscription right away. As a matter of fact, I'm so busy these days, I don't get around to sending out many Dollygrams anymore, though I'm trying to get better at that. So, pop down to the information section below and get the links, and get started with the single most efficient hack in the whole of Kanji. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below, and I will answer as usual. And I'd like to thank my gold Kokeshi patrons, my producer angels who make these videos possible, and you'll find a list of my red Kokeshi patrons in the information section below after those vital links. I'd like to thank all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere, and I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. Korekara mo yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Class dismissed.